Hi, welcome back to Layo's Academy. My name is Layo. On this channel, I teach beginners and career transitioners how to start their IT audit career with practical things they need to get started on their journey. Today, I am going to be talking about how to document in IT auditors testing. In practice, high quality work paper documentation is very critical to demonstrating the work you perform as an IT auditor. A third person should be able to pick up your work papers or documentation and be able to reperform or arrive at the same conclusion you arrived at while you did your testing. From my past experience, strong documentation reflects not only what you have done, not only what was done, but how well you as an auditor understands the control, the associated risk, and the testing approach. Let's get right into it. Why do we have to document in our work paper correctly or accurately? Why does the quality of our work paper matter? Work papers are what forms the foundation of our audit evidence, and they also help us to support internal review and enable reliance by external auditors. They also provide a clear audit trail. And lastly, it reflects audit professionalism. So as an IT auditor, the quality of your work paper matters because it is not just ending on your desk. Someone else is going to review it. An external auditor is going to come down the line 6 months time, a year's time, to pick up those work papers to also be able to arrive at their conclusion. So it reflects audit professionalism, showing that you know what you are documenting or what evidence you have reviewed. What are the objectives of audit documentation? The primary objective is to clearly demonstrate the procedures that you performed. Whatever procedure you have performed has to be clearly demonstrated and documented in your work paper. It also shows the evidence you obtained, the conclusion you reached at the end of your testing. All these are not going to be your end. They have to be clearly documented in your work papers. It also enables independent review, like I mentioned earlier. An independent third party or external auditor should be able to pick up your documentation and be able to interpret what you have, the evidence you had reviewed that was documented in your work paper. Work paper should be sufficiently detailed such that an experienced auditor can reperform the work without calling you, without additional explanation. They should be able to pick up your work paper even after you have left the organization and also be able to reperform the work, the audit work you have documented. What should a complete work paper look like, or what should it include? First, we have to clearly state the control description and objective, and also the associated risk. Every work paper should clearly show what the control you are testing, the description of the control is, the control objective, and the control risk. It should clearly show your population and your sample selection. What is the definition of your population? Where did you get your population from? What was your sampling methodology? All this should be clearly reflected in your work paper. And then what were the testing procedures you performed? What was your testing steps that you performed? Also, the evidence that you reviewed should be clearly documented in your work paper. The screenshots, the reports or the logs, configuration settings, all with showing the completeness and accuracy of the report you are using should be clearly documented in your work paper. Understanding the control. Before you are able to document properly or have clear work paper documentation, you must understand the control design, which would include you being able to identify the control owner, the control frequency, and being able to understand how the control mitigates risk. Without this clarity, Your testing procedures may not align with the intended control objective. If you don't know the frequency of the control you are testing, it will limit your ability to test that control effectively. If you don't know what risk the control is mitigating, then your final conclusion, your audit review, would not be appropriate. Okay, so your control you should clearly have an understanding of the risks that your control is mitigating. Documenting the population. When it comes to documenting your population in your work paper, you must ensure completeness and accuracy. This is very critical. Ensure that the source of your population is clearly documented in your work paper, including the system where you got it, the source of record, including the period that was covered. Any reliance on any system generated report should be supported by validation procedures where applicable. So for any report or any population that you are using, you should ensure that you have evidence to validate the completeness and accuracy of that report. Sample selection documentation. For your sample selection, the methodology used should be clearly defined also. What is the rationale for your sample size? What is your selection criteria? Is it a risk-based selection? And then you should be able to link it back to the full population. You should ensure that the risk area is appropriate, like there's adequate coverage of the risk area, and also being able to trace to the population. The goal of this is to demonstrate that the sample is a very good representative of that control operation. Now, how do you write your test procedure? Testing procedures must be clear, must be structured, and aligned to the control objective. Ensure you avoid vague statements, and also ensure that each step can be reperformed by another auditor. Every procedure that is tested should directly address the risk the control is designed to mitigate. Okay, so these are the things you should take into consideration when you're writing your test procedure. Ensure you are able to clearly describe the testing steps you are performing. Ensure that it aligns to procedure. You align the procedures to the control objective. Avoid using vague statements, and also ensure the procedures are repeatable. Now let's look at an example of a very strong testing step. For example, when you're testing user access provision, these are very good examples of the testing steps. Obtain access request and approval. Verify that the approval occurred before provisioning. Confirm that the access requested aligns with the approved request. Ensure and access the timeliness of the provision. Each of these steps is directly supporting the control objective, and it is clearly stated what you are testing. Evaluating evidence. When reviewing evidence, ensure to focus on completeness, accuracy, and reliability. As mentioned, give preference to system-generated evidence with clear timestamps and approval identification. Make sure the timestamp, either from the system or from the machine you are using, is clearly stated also. Okay. And then in conclusion, make sure that your conclusion is properly documented. It must also be supported by evidence. Any conclusion without evidence backing it is no conclusion. And then when you have a pass, it means that the control operated effectively as designed, while a fail is a deviation from the identified control. And this also must be clearly documented with the supporting details. Always ensure that you clearly state the observation. Aside putting in the evidence, make sure you state the observation and also link your conclusion to your evidence. What are some documenting exceptions? For exceptions, make sure you clearly articulate what was expected versus what was observed. Always take the impact of the failure or deviation. Also, identify the root cause if known. Ensure you put at least a statement as to what the root cause of the control failure or control exception is. Exceptions can also be termed as control failure or control deviation. And then make sure you maintain clear and objective language. Most times, you may not be the one that is, identifying what the remediation will be, but at least ensure to document the root cause and the potential remediation. These are some of the common documentation mistakes that occurs most time. You have incomplete testing steps. Your testing steps are not clearly stated, or vague testing procedures. Lack of linkage to control objective. Your documentation is not linking, like it doesn't match what the control objective is saying or the control description. You do not have all your evidence documented. There's missing or insufficient evidence, or you have no clear conclusion. You don't have a clear conclusion statement. All this would reduce the reliability of your work paper. Do not over rely on screenshots. Yes, the screenshot, even when you have screenshots, make sure you label your screenshots correctly. Make sure you highlight the importance. Don't just put a bunch of screenshots on your work paper. Make sure you highlight. You put a red box or a text box or text description around your screenshot. Don't just put a dump of screenshots on your work paper, because when you do that, a third party picking your work paper would not know what he or she is looking for on the screenshots you have. What does a strong work paper look like? Strong work papers are structured. They are concise and easy to follow. They clearly demonstrate that the auditor's thought process is accurate, and it also provides sufficient evidence to support conclusions without additional clarification. I once worked with a manager while I was working at the Big Four, and the person was so good with one of the places where I learned how to make sure that your work paper is clear. She actually taught me to make sure like my work paper has structure, because most times your work paper will be probed extraordinarily if you don't have a clear work paper. Everything is mumbled. You don't have clear screenshots. You are not aligning your tables and all that. Okay, so a strong work paper should be clear, structured, and it should also be easy to follow, where you have to use arrows to demonstrate the sequence of events. Please go ahead and ensure that you do that. As a reminder, good documentation is not optional, it is compulsory. It reflects audit quality. You will be addressed the way your work paper looks. That is the level of scrutiny you are going to get. And it also helps to support defensible conclusions. Okay? And lastly, it builds trust with stakeholders. When stakeholders see your work papers, see how neat, how clean, how well structured it is, it builds trust with them to show that you know what you're doing. Please keep practicing documenting your testing. Review sample work papers. Focus on clarity and structure. And lastly, I have detailed resources on work paper documentations in my digital store. You can get these resources in my digital store, in my IT Audit Fundamentals workbook, to help you as you go along in your journey. Thank you. My name is Layo. Have a pleasant day.